Hey everybody, Stu Smith here, going live on a special live day. Got a couple things going on. One, I want to answer a question that has been blowing up my emails and DMs on social media about Air Force Special Warfare selection changes. But also, I want to make an announcement that I'm going to do another live show each week. Not sure when that's going to happen. Might be the weekend, might be in the middle of the week, not sure. But it's going to be a Never Quit Mindset podcast. We'll have guests on discussing, what was that moment when they decided to not quit and why. Kind of dig into some of the physical, mental toughness challenges that we all have, regardless of what job that is. We all go through it in some manner of speaking in life to accomplish something difficult. So that's going to be a new thing, but I wanted to real quickly address something so I can just send people to somebody asked, did I stop posting podcasts on Apple? No, I just haven't done enough lately. I think I did one last month I posted, but I should do them once a week. Probably what I'm going to wind up doing is starting to post these on the Apple podcasts, but you can find them all on YouTube. So that's where they are. I just haven't gone through the process of getting them up on um, Apple Podcasts and other podcast sources. All right, so real quick, what's been blowing up my DMs are, hey, did you hear about the changes in Air Force Special Warfare? And I'm like, what changes? They change stuff all the time. Um, so I mean, it's just something you kind of have to get used to. Something I do as a tactical fitness writer and coach. I try to keep up with all the changes. And I won't lie to you, this one has been changing probably more than I change underpants. No, not quite. But I would say in the last 10 years, they've gone from changing what they call themselves a couple of times to changing their fitness test, changing the name of the fitness test, to changing the way they do selection, which I think for the most part has been a good evolution. I mean, I know it can be frustrating with multiple changes and trying to uh, understand what the changes mean to preparation as well as what's the end product of those selections. But let me just start with this. Everybody's saying, hey, they're going to take out the pool skills out of selection, kind of like the pre dive out of selection. Okay. I mean, if you look at it kind of like the Army Special Forces model, that's a working model that makes great special operators. And if they so choose to want to do a aquatic diving mission, they can later go to dive school. I get that. However, I will say this: if you cannot swim and be confident in the water, you are ineffective on 75% of the planet. Now, I'm not bashing anybody that isn't, you know, that is not an aquatically operator um, program. It's just a fact, right? They're going to have to be something else that gets you that ability to work in the water. Be honest with you, there were rumors, and now this was like scuttlebutt rumors back in like 2010 in the middle of, wars in desert and mountain ranges, no water to be found, to actually shorten or get rid of dive phase at Buds and make it an extended land warfare phase. It was just a talk. No one made any changes to it. It was just a discussion. This, from what I understand, has started a discussion of, all right, let's take a look at the last 20 years of how we've been operating. Have we done much diving or aquatic training as operators? They can weigh that and say yes or no. I don't know what those statistics are. And they can also look at, we're losing some really good people because of the way the selection is set up, even though they may not go and be Air Force pararescue folks who, in my opinion, need to be well versed in aquatic situations, just given what they have traditionally done since their existence, and that is rescuing Air Force pilots and pulling them out of any situation, and that may include water situation as well. But it's also a great insertion platform too. It's not the best, but it is one of many options that you can pull from your backpack of options, whenever you decide that you are going to insert into a dangerous, enemy territory. So, I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. I am not read into anything as far as how that changes selection. I think from what I've initially read, it's going to change CCT, um, Special Tactics Officer, and Special Reconnaissance. That their selection process will be less aquatically oriented. Okay, so that's the way it is. I will say this though. Yeah, somebody just said water's the great equalizer. Taking it out is not a good move. Yeah, I agree. But, it really depends on what you're doing with that water training. All right. Yes, you will have people who are probably a little mentally tougher, having gone through an aquatics program, especially if it is a gut check. Every single pool event is testing you to your core. Do you want that kind of person in your unit? Yeah, you do. Especially someone who has managed to work through all the types of problems that can underwater when you can't breathe and you got to fix it. That's a high stress situation. Just like I like, seeing running in Spec Ops selection, because there's nothing quite like running to test someone's will to keep up with a group or to meet a standard. So all of those things I think are great um, ways to train and select and prepare people for the potential challenges they're going to face in a very challenging job, that could involve water. But as with anything, I will continue to say this when it comes to swimming. If there's anything I do well, is I coach swimming to non-swimming athletes to be spec ops swimmers. Now, on a competitive scale, that is nothing. It might be an 11, 12-year-old competitive swimmer is about as good as we really get, right? We're not competitive swimmers. We don't need to swim 5,000 meters a day. Don't need to be pretty. We just need to be competent in the water and be able to handle certain situations in not just pool water, dark water, cold water, murky water, when it's very challenging. So I don't really have an answer, but I will always say, if you're unable to swim, you are ineffective on 75% on this earth. That's just the way it goes. Yeah, you can go ride a boat, but that's a different situation. All right, let's take some questions while we have them. I'm going to only stick around for about 30 minutes and then I got to bail, but I just wanted to answer that and say, yes, there are changes coming. How that's going to look, I don't know. Will it produce a better product? I don't know. Will it perhaps have a better result of more people getting through the pipeline that are good people that can do a job like CCT or SR or STO that maybe not need to dive as part of their mission set? Perhaps. That's okay too. But if there's a group within Air Force Special Warfare that needs to be going to dive school and needs to be aquatic rescuers, yes, then you need a selection program that tests that and challenges that person to do that job. So, so when I hear it, the changes are coming, I hear everything from like there's no more water in Air Force Special Warfare, and it just also only pertains to a few groups. So I don't want to spread those rumors. From what I understand, it is not the pararescue folks, but other groups within Air Force Special Warfare that may not have to endure a selection that has aquatic challenges in them. Maybe even the IFT changes. Might not even have to swim 500 meters. I don't know. So these are types of questions that haven't been answered yet, and I'm sure we'll figure them out. And when we do, I'll probably make a change to this, or I won't, and just say, hey, if you're going CCT, don't worry about the swimming. But if you want a good way to stay competent on 100% of this planet, you should practice swimming and practice those skills because it is important. David says, I'm following your plans on your workout book. Should I be doing all in one workout or should I broken up throughout the day? Yeah, that's a great question. These workouts are long. There's multiple activities in them. Sometimes there's calisthenics, weights, running, and swimming all in the same day. It's up to you, and it's up to your schedule, really. My advice is do what we do, and we actually can't swim in the morning due to our schedule and the pool schedule. So we do the land stuff in the morning and swim it in the afternoon. So that's how we break it up. So yeah, I haven't stopped posting on Apple Podcasts. In fact, after this, I'll post a couple of videos on there, make sure I got them on there. I've heard CCT has massive attrition rate. I wonder what it'll look like now. Maybe that's one of the problems they want to fix, especially if you take a look at CCT mission sets. Have they been involved with, diving or water insertions? Perhaps. I don't know. Do you have a good amount of guys get through buds from attending the Heroes of Tomorrow program? Yes. I'd be honest with you, it's countless. Been doing it since 2003. So we have guys that are retiring. So what's up, Stu? Getting into the process. How should I go about rucking? JanSport bag and send it? No, JanSport sucks. Don't do a school backpack and call it a ruck. My advice would be if you really want to start smartly, do it with a weight vest. At least that way it's kind of situated properly and you're getting used to the weight of rucking. Then get yourself a real backpack, like depending on what branch of service you're going to do, get the Alice pack, the Molly pack. Um, figure out what branch of service backpack you are going to be issued. Buy yourself one of those. Put a sandbag in the back of it, not a bunch of dumbbells, which is just stupid way to get bruises all over your back. Usually what I do is I make my own sandbag. I'll go buy a $5 bag of sand from the hardware store, the kind of sand that you put into a sandbox for a kid. It's a 50-pound bag of sand for about $4 or $5. Cut a little hole in it, dump out about 10 pounds, 5, 10 pounds, and then compact it and roll that thing up in its original bag and then duct tape it. 2 rolls of duct tape and cover that baby from one end to the other. Looks like a little silver pill of sand. And it should, if you have a Alice pack, it should fit perfectly right in that radio pouch, which is up by the shoulder blades versus down by your hips. And that is a great way to do rucking. So that's what I would do. Is it true that shorter, limber people exert more in swimming compared to those with longer limbs? Short-limbed. Okay, I got you. Yeah, you're gonna have to work a little harder. I mean, I've had guys that could swim 8 minutes who were 5'5", and guys that were swimming 8 minutes who were 6'5", and the 6'5" person definitely swims more efficiently because you can just grab more water, you can kick more water, but I've seen little guys crank it out too. So, in fact, we've had sub-8 swimmers who were sub 5'6", 5'4" for years. So it can be done, especially with the CSS. With freestyle, probably a little harder. Yeah, this is Air Force. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you can ask any question you want. Um, let's see here. Do you feel it diminishes our returns at all by splitting it up? Well, I don't know. I mean, I like the challenge that aquatics training provides. It is tough. I mean, if you're spending a couple of hours in a pool as part of your training, it's not easy, and it's exhausting. It's challenging both physically and mentally, and I think it is a great way to build a certain level of toughness and confidence in water where a lot of people don't have confidence in the water. So I'm not really for making the change, but I've been out of the Navy for 25 years now, and 26 years now, and I don't get a say in it, but that's just my opinion. But I will say this, Army Special Forces are competent operators, and I would say this: if you take a look at the changes that Air Force Special Warfare has made, they are modeling more of the Army selection process versus the Navy selection process. But that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's quite logical, honestly. However, if there is going to be an aquatics mission in Air Force Special Warfare, whatever job it is, they should have some kind of screening, especially prior to dive school, that enables them to be, one, competent rescue swimmers if they need to do that, and two, competent divers if they need to do that. But I guarantee you, somebody's looking into it and saying, we're losing a lot of people. This is costing this much money. We are sending people to these schools. It costs this much money to do that. Yet, in the last 20 years, we have only used water insertions by diving this amount of times, which I don't know what that number is. But somebody does, and somebody's looking at it and saying, why are we doing this? I think that's a logical question to ask. I don't think it's necessarily has a yes or no answer or right or wrong answer. I think we're going to figure it out. And then maybe they need to make another change later. I don't know. But there's been a lot of changes. Air Force Special Warfare. I've updated this book 5 times in 10 years. Do you think slow runs, zone 2, are needed more than goal pace if you can run fast but run out of gas early? Yes. I can run 1 mile in 6:58, but trying to maintain that for 5 miles is impossible. Well, I would say this. You know, a 6:58 is not a fast 1 mile. Like if you were telling me you're running a 5:30, I'd say yeah, it's pretty fast. A 7-minute is what you're going to want to turn a 7-minute mile into a almost a zone 2, maybe zone 3 type of effort, because especially if you're going to do it for 5 miles. But yeah, I think you need a little bit of both. My advice would be this: if running is somewhat new to you, you don't have to do it with just running, right? Going and doing a 10-minute mile for 8 miles on a Saturday, yeah, you could do that if it's not throwing you off of your mileage progression too much. But learning how to run a 6-minute mile pace is just as important. For a mile and a half, but if you're trying to run 5 miles at a 7-minute pace, that's good. Looks like you can do it now. Now you just got to string more of those miles together. And a good way to do that is, yes, some zone 2 training, but also some 7-minute mile training as well. So you need to learn the pace, but also build your aerobic capacity, which you can do it. What I like is the 50-50 method, where you turn it into a brick workout, which is just a bike run combo. So instead of doing an hour worth of running, you do like 30 minutes worth of biking. Then on top of that, you do 30 minutes worth of running. Get an hour's worth of cardio with half the impact. Now, that's for new runners, people who can't run for an hour quite yet. So that's kind of where I am on that topic. If you were a cross country runner, I'd say, yeah, you need to definitely put in some more miles and run some zone 2. If you're 150 pounds and, don't worry about getting stronger and being able to do pull ups and overhead presses and rucking, then yeah, go run. But if you're a bigger guy and trying to add that much mileage, do yourself a favor. Your knees will thank you for not doing 60 miles a week at zone 2. Just a thought. Note does a 2 miles at 14:40. Not bad. It's a 7:20 mile pace. But yeah, that's how I would do it. All right. How long does someone attend the program before leaving for boot camp? That might be a loaded question. Well, it depends. I've had people here for well over a year, but also have had people here just for as little as 2 to 3 months. But also it really depends on their athletic history. Like the people who are here the shortest usually came to me with an athletic history of D1 college athlete, or you know multi-sport athlete in high school, and stuck around a little bit a while after high school, and got in specific like buds or spec ops shape depending on what branch of service they're going into. But I've seen as little as 2 to 3 months get out of here and ship out, and I've seen as long as a couple of years, just because they were young and they needed some time to mature into their bodies and finish growing. So, no, it's a good question. How do you recommend someone modify their training around overuse injury? Well, my advice is don't do what caused the injury and work around it. That means if it's running, bike, elliptical, row, swim more. And if you If you can't run at all, run 0 miles per week. If you can still run without serious pain, but it's bothering you a little bit, cut back to 25% of what you've been doing. And just test it out every now and then. But you got to work around it. That's the only way to do it. And replace whatever you're skipping with something else. Now that could be can't do leg exercises because your knee's jacked up. Can't run too. So now you can't do squats, but can you do RDLs? Can you do deadlifts? Maybe. Maybe you can't. Maybe not. I don't know. But try to be creative and figure out what you need to work around. That's what I do as a coach. I try to help people work around injuries, not get injuries primarily. Let's see here. All right, looks like I got a few more questions here. What pace are the runs to chow? Not fast. I would say very, very slow. Almost, and we would even walk it some days, but we didn't walk much. But some days we did if we were early, took our time. I think if you get caught walking, you might pay the piper, but eventually you're kind of like, what are they going to do? Make us get wet and sandy? So, just depends. Let's see. All right. So my dad was a command sergeant major, did PJs 28 years, went 24 STS. Badass. I'm in the Army now. My buddy and I are trying out for PJs next year. Yeah, cool. Good luck. Any idea to RPM range for that 30 minutes on the bike? Maybe do 5-minute sprint, less. Yeah, my advice is just get your heart rate up. Whether that's a life cycle or an assault bike, just get your heart rate up. That can vary from person to person for sure. But know your heart rate for when you're running zone 2 and keep your heart rate in that zone 2 if you want to work your aerobic base. In the fall season, is there a goal to aim for to achieve, or is it more of a transition prepping the body for winter cycle where goals are building up to strength cycles? Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, our falls, the way they're set up is it is our peak fitness test time of the year. Most people do their best after a summer cycle of hard calisthenics and cardio. And then we go into the fall with a decline a little bit on running volume, running mileage, but we work on speed. And usually about midway through the fall, everybody's benefits from the summer peak after a little bit of a deload of all the miles, a little bit of deload of the reps. And then we have this little peak week where we do a PST in the first 2-3 weeks of fall, and usually everybody's at their best. So right around late September, early October is when we make that test. So that's kind of our goal, max out that PST. You don't have to do it. You can still max it out in the summer and the spring and the winter. You just have to specifically address it. Just our summer cycle specifically addresses it. And we've been building up for it all spring and summer. So I'm 165, 5'6", 20 pull-ups, 70 push-ups. Goal is RASP. I wouldn't say I'm a heavy runner. Yeah, you're not. And I've done slow runs up to 7 miles. Just curious if I'm doing too many fast runs. I do 1 repeat day and 1 tempo day. No, I don't think so. I mean, you can even throw a sprint day in there, and as long as you like focus on your cardio base. My advice would be this: since you're going to Army, you're probably not doing a lot of swimming. Where my Navy guys benefit from the aquatics training is it's another form of cardio that is non-impact cardio that actually will help their overall aerobic base whenever they do run and they progress it together. So my advice is just, you can do swimming or biking, you know, treat it like a triathlon almost, and add some non-impact cardio to that aerobic base training, and shoot for more 5 mile runs. It's funny because a guy asked me probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and he says, "Hey Stu, how can I get better at my 4 mile timed run? It's like at 30 minutes right now. I want to try to get it below 28." And I said, "Run more 4 mile timed runs in your workouts each week." And he laughed. I said, "No, I'm serious. Do it. Like tomorrow morning before our mobility day, go run 4 miles, right? And the next week, go run 4 miles. And the next week, he ran 4 miles, and he ran another 4 miles over the weekend. So he just added 8 miles of running to his week, and replaced a couple of the other runs. And you know what happened? He left here with like a 27:30 4 mile timed run. So he dropped 2.5 minutes by just adding more 4 mile timed runs. Because here's why: whenever you do that, you take off the stress of running a 4 or 5 mile timed run that is kind of eating you up mentally because you've done it. And then you start creating these strategies. How do I pace it when I start? How do I, when I turn around, do I do a negative split, or do I just keep on the same pace? Um, and you get better at doing it every time you do it. So I hate to answer sometimes with, how do you do more push-ups? Do more push-ups. How do you run faster? Run faster. But it is the truth. It works. And everybody was laughing at me when I told them do more 4 mile timed runs. And then, wasn't even 3 months. It was like a month later, he dropped 2 minutes off his time. He says, "Yep, it's working." you know, you don't have to get all fancy and go hire a track coach. Just practice. Have one of your older books, Maximum Fitness, Complete Guide to Navy SEAL Cross Training. Would you still recommend this book? Yeah, you know what? It is a good book. It is my very first attempt at seasonal tactical fitness periodization. Let me tell you where this book came to existence. Is I got out when I was 30 years old. I started a new type of training when I got out. And I got out of the military. I was kind of banged up a little bit, had some injuries, and I just realized that I'd been redlining my 20s too much, like running high, lifting hard, high rep calisthenics year round, and it was just kind of beating me up. So at 30, it kind of caught up to me. So I realized I probably need to start bell curving my intensity through the year. So I dropped my running and just did a lift cycle over the winter. Came back around in the spring. I felt great. Felt like, I went back to my old school lifting days of like Joe Weider hypertrophy, and that's what that program is in there. It's great weight gain workout, and just get stronger, a little bit stronger, but mostly just bigger. And then came around to the spring where I decided, I'm kind of done lifting. Let me get back into running because I don't hurt anymore. And I started a logical progression with the spring calisthenics. And then the summer I peaked, felt really good. And I'm like, okay, I've reached a level. I don't want to stay here year round. So I turned it back down in the fall and started turning two things. I started decreasing mileage each week, and I started decreasing reps, but I started adding weight, like weight vest calisthenics. And then that turned into another lift cycle. And that was my very first year of creating what I've been doing now for 26 years. And that is seasonal tactical fitness periodization. Now, is it older? Yes, absolutely. It's older. Do I look at it and say, ooh, I wouldn't do that now? No, I'd say that's a way to do it. I have definitely evolved in my coaching and training and coming up with new ideas for warm ups. I think in that one, there's a lot of jumping jack push ups for upper body day warm ups, jumping jack squats for lower body day warm ups. Now I do it completely differently with short jogs and little half pyramids. I find that to be very useful as a warm up. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just different. It's a way to train. It is older, but it still works. Human body hasn't changed that much in 25 years, unless it's you personally, because then I promise you have. You know, if you're now 45, absolutely. I probably wouldn't do that workout if I was 45. You can try it, but you may want to do something with adding mobility day into your world. That one did not have mobility day in its programming. All right, somebody said, by 4 miler, do you mean running the 4 miler at max effort? Well, I mean, define your term max effort. Is it a sprint that you start off sprinting? No, it's not. You want to run your 4 mile timed run as best you can. So, yes, I guess it is max effort, right? Um, but let's say I guess you're doing a 5 miler, right? So make sure you also check out the latest RASP workout, because you may be surprised that some things have changed over there. In fact, I updated this program because of it. There's update to pre-ranger assessment. The RPA has changed. It's run 1 mile, 6 pull-ups, 100-meter kettlebell carry fast, 100-meter sprint drop prone position, kind of like a run, stop, and burpee. Run, stop, and do a burpee for 100 yards. 100-meter Skedco drag, that's just a stretcher drag. And then a 2 mile run. Total time has to be under 27 minutes. So did you see anywhere it says 4 mile or 5 mile timed run? Something to consider. Take a look at it. See what they're actually testing now. But it won't hurt you to run 5 miles. Get your 5 mile timed run good, and get your 12 mile ruck solid as well. But yeah, you want to run it fast. It's not a zone 2 jog when you do a timed run. Any timed run should not be a zone 2. It should be for time, and you should try to PR it every time. All right. I didn't have the knowledge on increasing of mileage and suffered a stress fracture. Haven't been able to recover from any advice yet. Quit running. Non-impact for a while. And like Hunter said, get those shin muscles stronger. Yeah, non-impact cardio for you for a while. Do I have a dream guest to have on my tactical fitness report? Good question. I don't know. I mean, I've had some really cool people on tactical fitness report, and then there's another series of I used to do called Two Through and After. I've had some really cool folks on that from all different types of services, Green Berets, SEALs, guys that were at NASA. Cool stuff. Yeah, police officers, firefighters, all types. Good question. All right, last question. If you do fall winter cycles, will the pull-ups, push-ups, sit-up numbers decline very low or just a bit? No, because our fall and winter cycles look like this. We warm up with calisthenics. We cool down with cardio. In the middle, we lift. So you actually have a pretty solid maintenance of your calisthenics numbers and your cardio just because you're doing them every upper body day and every lower body day. And every fourth week with the block periodization model, like this one, right? This is a spring one. Do I have a fall one in here? Thought I did. With the block periodization model like this, every fourth week is a calisthenics and cardio cycle. And we do that all through winter as well. So it helps you maintain or even improve your calisthenics and cardio just because of that block periodization model. So, like someone asked me about maximum fitness, my first time doing it, it was just a 13-week cycle, really 12 with a deload week at the end. Now we put those deload weeks every 4 weeks and we change the components of that workout. So you get a rest from lifting and you go back to maintenance of calisthenics and cardio. And in the summer, just like we're about to do next week, is week 4 of summer, I think. Yeah, I think so. We're going to do a deload of the running and the calisthenics and do a lift week with some running and calisthenics still, but just not the same progression that we have been doing. So our progression looks like this. It's somewhat linear. Then that fourth week, it flattens. Somewhat linear, fourth week, it flattens. Somewhat linear, fourth week, it flattens until we get to 12, 13 weeks of that cycle. All right. That's how it looks. So you guys, if I missed your question, just email me, stu@stewsmith.com. I take emails all the time. Happy to answer your question. But look forward to a new type of podcast show that we're going to do. Have some guests on. It'll be a live podcast, so you can join in live with us. Post some questions up there, and I'll ask the guest as well. So, yeah, it's going to be the Never Quit Mindset podcast, which is basically going to discuss some of the things that are in here, just different stories that aren't in the book. It's a quick read, 10 chapters of what I think are very important processes of becoming both mentally and physically tougher. Because there's some psychology to it as well, and that's what that program's all about. All right, guys, I got to go. Thanks for your time. I hope that answered the Air Force Special Warfare question, or at least put it in a frame of mind to where just be patient and whatever happens is going to happen. Will it be better? I don't know. But you don't progress unless you're evolving, and maybe they figure they need to evolve in some way. So I'm going to go in it with an open mind, but I will always say, if you can't swim, you're ineffective on 75% of this globe. I'll end with that. You guys have a good one.